Welcome to this introductory film for the Master of Science programme, Development and Rural Innovation at Wageningen University. My name is Robert Coates and I'm a lecturer in the Sociology and Geography of Development. In the next 10 to 15 minutes, I'm going to give you a brief overview of the programme and then talk about the course that I teach as a core component of that programme. Now, Development and Rural Innovation is a 2-year social science programme which is designed for students with a background in technical sciences, life sciences or managerial sciences who are interested in international development. The central idea of the programme is that complex societal problems like poverty, inequality and natural resource depletion and management cannot be dealt with by technological processes alone. Now, the focus of the programme is on the link between technological and social aspects of innovation. Innovation processes like the transition towards more sustainable and better food security are essentially also social processes. Within the programme, we will teach you to analyse and understand the social aspects of transformation and innovation. Through this process, we explore development themes like migration, climate change, sustainability, disaster management, food security, health and natural resources. Of course, we also draw on our teaching staff who have a wide range of experience from all over the globe, and also on our students that come from a very wide range of backgrounds. And we draw on their contributions to discussions about development in the sessions. Within the programme, you can choose between the 4 study tracks that you see listed here: Communication and Innovation Studies, Sociology of Development, Technology and Development Studies, and Rural Sociology. My own background is in the Sociology of Development, and I teach the course Introduction to the Sociology of Development, Knowledge and Change. But what is that track all about? And what will be an example of some of the content from that track? Well, at its core, the Sociology of Development, Knowledge and Change is an interdisciplinary course bridging sociology, anthropology and geography. And that reflects real-world problems that can't be contained in individual disciplines. At the start of the course, we ask the difficult question, where does development knowledge come from? Now, if you think about that in more depth, you think about development as an idea. When did development as an idea actually emerge? We take for granted on an everyday level that we develop and other people develop, but when did development actually become an industry that is done to others? Linked to this question is how much control or agency people actually have over their own development, or are decisions made outside of their own capability or interest in larger scale institutions and development agencies. So the course is based in politically engaged study, questioning power over development processes and who holds the knowledge, who decides in what form development unfolds. In terms of course topics and approaches, we provide an introduction to social science and social thinking within development studies. Now, this draws on theories of development, long-standing ideas like modernization, dependency, and critical challenges from post-colonialism, gendered approaches, and political ecology. But we also explore contemporary critical problems in development, including trade, globalization, and the relation to colonial inheritances, the challenges of environmental change, biodiversity loss and disasters, and also rural livelihoods and the relationship between rural and urban change. Now, we use student-led seminars and student discussion groups as well as more traditional lecture formats because we want a lot of interaction both between students and staff. Now, to give you a taster of some of the content that you'd enjoy from my own course, I'm going to talk for a few minutes now about livelihoods, commodities and fair trade. Now what you see in the pictures here are a cafe that you might find in Amsterdam, London, New York, or even Wageningen. And then on the other side, the picture of a rural coffee producer, in this case in Jamaica. Now the pictures are interesting because when we enjoy a coffee, we don't often think about the other side of the coin, about the producer on which our coffee depends. But there's kind of a more theoretical academic issue going on here, that rural innovation is also related to urban innovation at the other side of the planet in this case. So there's a relationship and a commodity trade going on here between rural producers and consumers elsewhere. Now, fair trade has stepped in the last couple of decades to try and improve the livelihoods of rural producers, especially in the coffee market. And I'll go on to talk a little bit more about fair trade in the coming slides. But first, a little reflection on coffee. Well, coffee is a global commodity chain, increasingly valuable market over the past few decades based on increased consumption. But it's a very volatile market with frequent boom and bust. For example, after 2001, there was a liberalization of the coffee trade where the global price fell. As I said, consumption increased, but also the number of producer countries and number of actual producers increased. And all of these factors impacted on the price of coffee in the global market and the amount of money that rural producers would actually receive for their work. Coffee is also vulnerable to the effects of climate change. It's a sensitive crop, so development initiatives should try to look at susceptibility to these sorts of problems to counteract them in the future. Development studies should then look at the whole chain, both the producer end, the livelihoods at the local level, and the consumer end, and the various middlemen in between. But in terms of livelihoods, what are actual producer livelihoods? Now, many social scientists and development practitioners talk about livelihood, and it's also a concept used by NGOs like CARE or Oxfam, who have their own livelihood approaches. Now, the basis of theories of livelihood are that livelihood outcomes, the kind of security that households feel, are related both to context and strategies. Now, contexts are the natural resource base and the tools and technologies that people can rely on, that rural producers can rely on, but also the historical and political context of their production. Strategies, on the other hand, are the sort of decisions that households might make about the way that they produce. So this could be decisions about diversifying crops, about producing some crops to use at home or to trade in the local market, as well as working on coffee to trade in a global market. There might be decisions made about crop intensification or de-intensification, or strategies made about joining together with a community group or influencing other sort of institutional actors. The key thing here is that livelihood outcomes are theorized to stem not just from context, not just from strategy, but from both. Taking this forward, a sustainable livelihood is perceived as one that can cope with and recover from stresses and shocks, while not undermining the kind of assets, resources that people rely on, including the natural resource base. In the Caribbean and Central America, where many thousands of livelihoods depend on coffee production, coffee crops are often devastated during and after hurricanes, with whole livelihoods wiped out. So there's a clear question about how to enable climate-resilient livelihoods in the future. Now, development initiatives can focus on the local level to try to improve people's strategies to deal with their place in the market, the kinds of activities they engage in, or development strategies could look at a global level, look at the global marketplace and try and influence prices and the way in which coffee is consumed, for example. Now, into this debate steps fair trade. Fair trade really come up in the last 20 to 30 years with clear aims to increase consumer ethics and embed social values in trade relations, to certify local production standards, to bring a bigger market share to producers and less to middlemen, and help producers diversify and strategize. It's important to note that a fair trade crop may only bring the farmer 10 cents more per pound than a non-fair trade item, but nonetheless it can have an impact. Fair trade can help local producers to strategize because they might be able to choose different markets to sell their product to. Having said this, we might question, is fair trade really the solution to a big problem about rural livelihoods and production of these commodities? A lot of research has been done on this topic, and many of these authors say that it's not as simple a debate or argument as a good or bad trade. At the basis of the argument is the idea that to add value via fair trade, you need something to add value to. You need a lower value standard trade in order to have something at a higher price. That's not to say that fair trade can't help some producers in some places. It can help them to strategize. But there is a sense that it does little to make coffee a more lucrative crop overall in terms of worldwide commodity chain relationships. So this leaves us with the question, is fair trade actually more about creating a consumer feel-good factor, or is it really about rural livelihoods? Or can it be both? And I leave you to think about that. To sum up, international development and rural innovation are study areas that link producers with consumers and societies across the globe. Local strategies and agency in development processes should be studied in wider global context. The MDR programme provides the opportunity for theoretical and practical study to explore social, political, economic and environmental contexts as well as technological solutions. I, for one, look forward to welcoming you to Wageningen and to MDR.